Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm Bill Schaefer, Vice President for Student Affairs, and it's great to see you all here for Family Weekend. I think we have 2,300 registered for the weekend, and so we'll probably have a pretty full house here. I have the pleasure this afternoon of introducing Georgia Tech's 11th President, Dr. G.P. Bud Peterson. President Peterson came to Georgia Tech 5.5 years ago from the University of Colorado at Boulder, where he served as chancellor. Prior to that, he served as provost at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. During his career, he's worked for NASA and the National Science Foundation. He's also served on the faculty of Texas A&M University. Throughout his career, President Peterson has played an active role in helping to establish the national education and research agendas, serving on numerous industry, government, and academic task forces and committees. This week, he was reappointed to the National Science Board, the policy-making body for the National Science Foundation, by President Obama. He was first appointed to the National Science Board in 2008 by Presidents George W. Bush. President Peterson greatly values Georgia Tech's parents' involvement with the student experience at Tech as well as the Institute. Additionally, he's been where you are today as he and Tech's First Lady, Val Peterson, have 4 adult children, 2 that are Georgia Tech graduates. So please join me in welcoming Georgia Tech's 11th President, Dr. Peterson.
Well, thanks, Bill. I want to invite the folks in the back to come on in and find a place. There's some seats up front here, but it's getting dark. Is there an engineer in the house? There we go. It's great to have you here. Before I start, I want to make a couple of introductions. Of course, you just met Dr. Bill Schaefer. He's the Vice President for Student Affairs, and he's responsible for all of the things that happen to your students outside of the classroom. The person that's responsible for almost all of the things that happen inside the classroom is our Provost, Dr. Raphael Bras. I also want to recognize, Bill mentioned her, but I want to recognize my wife, Val Peterson. She is the queen bee and tries to mother your young people when you're not around. But it's great to be here. I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an overview of Georgia Tech and some of the things that are going on here, some of the new exciting things, and a little bit of background. And then we'll leave some time for you to ask some questions. But we're glad you're here. This is an exciting weekend for us. It's one of my favorite times when the parents come back. How many of you are parents of first-year students? So yeah, that's usually what happens. About half of the group usually is first-year parents. They come back to just check on Johnny and Betty and make sure that everything's okay. We're taking good care of them, I promise. But we'll try to give you an update and a little bit of information. Georgia Tech, a lot of people, and you may have been one of them, are surprised sometimes when they first come to Georgia Tech. They are surprised because it is a campus that's located in Midtown Atlanta, and they're surprised because it is actually a campus. We have 400 and some contiguous acres. It looks like a park in many areas, lots of trees. We're actually one of the 20 top tree campuses in the country, and that is if you look at a plan view and look at the percentage of area that's covered by trees, we're one of the top 20 in the country. We have about 21,500 students here on campus in Atlanta. We're ranked number 7 by U.S. News & World Report among public universities. Those rankings just came out this past week. Undergraduate engineering moved from number 5 to number 4, so we're pleased with that. And we do about $730 million in research expenditure. So our overall budget is about $1.5 billion a year, and about half of that is research, where we take in grants from companies, from the federal government, from individuals to conduct research, and then the faculty, the students, graduate and undergraduate students are involved in that research and conduct that research. About 5.5 years ago when I came, we undertook a strategic plan, a plan to try to understand what Georgia Tech might be like in 20 or 25 years. And the thing that really precipitated that, it was April of 2009, actually April 1st of 2009. And if you remember, the economy right then wasn't real strong. And so we decided that instead of looking 3 or 5 years where the response to any new ideas might be, well, where are we going to get the money for that? we decided to look 25 years. And what would Georgia Tech look like on its 150th anniversary 25 years down the road? We are 5 years into that plan, and so it's helpful for us to go back and think about what has happened in the first 5 years of that strategic plan and the implementation of that strategic plan. And you can see some of the things that have happened. The first institution to be invited into the AAU in 9 years. We were invited in 2010, and the previous one was 2001. It was actually Texas A&M University. We've invested in new faculty positions to create 123 fully funded new faculty positions, 51 new chairs. We raised through private philanthropy and foundations about $140 million a year. So if you think about that $1.5 billion budget, of the $750,000 that's research, move it away, leaves about $750. We get about $180 million from the state through appropriation, about $220 million from tuition, and about $120 to $140 million a year through private gifts and income on the endowment. Our endowment today is valued at $1.88 billion. We are the 11th highest endowment among public universities, and so we're a very, very well-endowed public university. Talk about the freshman class. A lot of you here have freshman students. Tremendous freshman class. It's just a great group of students. We've seen a 127% increase in the number of applications in the past 5 years. We've gone from 11,400 to 25,880. In 2009, we accepted 68% of the students that applied to Georgia Tech. For this current freshman class, we accepted 33%. So that's a dramatic change in the acceptance rate. And there are a lot of things that are driving that. We're not sure exactly what it was. We saw 46% year-over-year increase this past year. Some of that was clearly due to the fact that we went to the Common Application, and many of you know that. It was not a good year to go to the Common App. They had a platform. Wasn't our problem, but their platform had some challenges. But we were able to resolve some of those, which I think helped us. So some of it was because we went to the Common App. But when I talk to presidents at other universities, they would experience a 20 or 25% increase in applications when they went to the Common App. And you wonder why that is a little bit. We were concerned that maybe some of the applications would be soft applications. That is, all the students have to do to take their Common App is pay the application fee and push a button. But what it did was it gave us an opportunity to have an interaction and a conversation with some students who were thinking about Georgia Tech but hadn't really looked into it very seriously. So we actually had an acceptance, a yield rate that was higher than it has been in the past. Just a little bit, but higher. So we were very positive about that. So some of the increase in applications was due to the going to the Common App. I think some of it was driven by the return on investment. 15 years ago, nobody talked about a return on investment in higher education. It was just a good thing to do to go get more education. But as state appropriations have gone down, tuition has gone up, and I think people are paying more attention to what is the return and the potential return on investment. What are the chances that my student can get a job when they graduate? Those latest poll came out just yesterday. I saw it. It's payscale.com. It's a Wall Street Journal publication, and Georgia Tech was again ranked number 1 in the country for return on investment. And the third factor may have been Nick Selby. So a little delay there, but Nick was the convocation speaker a year ago this past fall, and I'm sure you saw it. We're from Georgia Tech, and you can do that. It went viral. I don't know, Patty, are we up to 8 million, 7 million? We're at about 7 million hits on that, but Nick's a rock star. I did the ALS challenge, the Ice Bucket Challenge, and we filmed it. And Nick, I was talking about some of the research we're doing and walked by, and I said, I'm going to take the Ice Bucket Challenge, and Nick came through on the video and said, President Peterson, you can do that. So it was great to have him, but he was 39% women is the highest percentage of women we've ever had. 6 years ago, that number was 30%. I'd like to say that the reason that it's gone up so much is because of all the great new programs that we put in the past 5 years. But the reality is, I think a lot of that is because of some steps that were taken 8, 10, 12 years ago when Georgia Tech got actively engaged in K through 12 education. Having summer camps and summer opportunities for students to come here and experience Georgia Tech, learn a little bit more about it, and realize that science, engineering, technology, computing, those things can be fun. And when I talk to a lot of the freshman young women at Convocation and ask them why they came to Georgia Tech, a lot of times the response is, well, I came to a computer camp on campus when I was in 8th grade. And that has helped us tremendously in terms of the underrepresented minorities and women. We're creating an environment for success for our students. In the past 5 years, our freshman to sophomore retention rate has gone from 93 to 96%. That is the number or the percentage of freshmen that return as sophomores. And we're not sure what that number should be, what our target should be. This may not be the right place for every student, but we certainly like to see that type of improvement. 4, 5, and 6-year graduation rate, one of the questions I get often is why is the 4-year graduation rate so low? And a lot of that, I see a lot of people going like this to the person next to them. Part of the reason is we do some things that actually make it challenging for students to graduate in 4 years. And it's not because of the academic rigor, it's because of things like co-op. 35% of our students are in the co-op program, which is automatically a 5-year program. Study abroad. About 46% of our students participate in study abroad. And that, while it doesn't have to slow you down slow the students down in their graduation, they typically don't take as many credits when they're in France or in China or somewhere else as they do when they're here in Atlanta, because the inside of the library in Metz, France looks a lot like the inside of the library here in Atlanta. And they want to be able to spend some time seeing the country, seeing if they go to France or someplace in Europe to travel around. And it's not uncommon to talk to the students that go to the Oxford program or the program at our campus in Metz for them to talk about leaving class on Thursday afternoon with a suitcase, getting on the train, riding around for the weekend, getting off the train on Monday morning and going directly to class. So it's just a great experience for those students. Interesting statistic, we have about 140,000 living alums. A fourth of them have graduated in the past 5 years. That's a pretty remarkable number. And it's because of the growth, the size of Georgia Tech and the growth that we've had the past several years. Global impact, this is something that is important, I think, to you. We live in a flat world, as Tom Friedman said about 10 or 15 years ago, a world that's changing very quickly, and we're trying to prepare our students for that type of world. Part of the challenge on the 25-year strategic plan was how do we prepare students for an environment that's very uncertain, that it's hard to understand what the world and the work environment's going to be like in 20 or 25 years when your young people are in mid-career. What do we need to do to prepare them for that type of environment? But one of the things we're certain of is that they need to know and recognize that this is a global environment that they're in. Many of the companies that hire these young people are interested in students that understand that. And one of the greatest things that happens, I think, to our students that study abroad, I used to think it was because they learned another language and they learned another culture, but I think the biggest thing is it's a very eye-opening experience for them. They understand there's a great big world out there. And it's also an experience that gives them tremendous amount of confidence. They go to some place that's very foreign without mom and dad with them, and are able to adjust, and they figure out how to do it, and they know that they can do it. And that type of experience for them in many cases will be very, very dramatic. When I talk to students at commencement and say what was the most significant or important thing or interesting or exciting thing that you did during your time at Georgia Tech, they hardly ever say that Calculus 2 course. They almost always say it was study abroad or co-op. And when I talk to the parents, they usually like the study abroad because they get a chance to go over and visit. We've got students from actually 50 states now. We found somebody from Wyoming. And 50 countries. I mentioned the study abroad, but we have centers in China, Singapore, Ireland, Costa Rica, and Panama. We have students that study in 118 countries around the world, and a very, very big part of what we're doing. Global partnerships, we have research and education collaborations with more than 80 countries, so students don't have to go to an institution where we already have a collaboration. They can find and identify an institution of their own choosing, and we have some steps that they have to go through so we can transfer the credits. This past April, we were in Shenzhen and opened a Master's of Science degree in electrical and computer engineering. And in May, we were at the Lafayette Institute where we opened up we were in Metz where we opened up the Lafayette Institute. It's a research center, a building immediately adjacent to our campus there. We actually have a physical presence, send about 250 students a semester to our campus in France. They go over there, they take Georgia Tech classes, they live in residence halls that we have over there and then travel the country. That's kind of a funny picture, and you might wonder why there's only two of us that have our hands over our hearts, but they're playing the Star Spangled Banner there. And the rest of those folks are French. We also were able to visit SHAPE, which is the Supreme Headquarters of Allied Powers of Europe. This was a great visit. We had 25 students from the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs that were studying in the Oxford program. And this gentleman right here is General Philip Breedlove, civil engineering class of 1977 from Georgia Tech. That's his back to you. General Breedlove arranged for us to get into the Supreme Headquarters of Allied Powers in Europe, which is in Mons, Belgium. He arranged for the students and our party to get there into this high secure facility, and he stood and talked to these students for an hour and a half. It was great. Val and I and Raphael and his wife Pat were fortunate enough to be able to stay in the chateau. NATO provides a chateau for the Supreme Headquarters, or the Supreme Allied Commander, which is always a U.S. general. And we were able to spend the night, and General Breedlove and I were talking. It was the last week in May and the first day or two of June, and we were talking about these students, and he was so impressed with them. And the idea that we could send some students to the 70th anniversary of the Normandy invasion came up, and he said, well, send me the names of the students and we'll figure out how to make that happen. It turns out that if you're a four-star general, I've never been in the military, but if you're a four-star general, you've got a lieutenant colonel that helps make things happen. Well, General Breedlove's lieutenant colonel is a Georgia Tech alum. He contacted us. He contacted us and said, give us the list and the social security numbers and some background information, and we'll arrange for them to get there. And we sent him a list of 25 students, and then he said, well, I thought there were 250. Well, those are the students in Metz. So it turned out that we had 240 students from the campus in Metz, France, that rode a bus for 15 hours to go celebrate the D-Day invasion and heard President Obama speak. And when you think about experiences of your lifetime and how significant that'll be to those 240 students, General Breedlove was very instrumental in helping that happen. It turns out that our commencement speaker last May was a fellow named, Admiral Sandy Winnefeld, who's the vice chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And it turns out that he is civil engineering class of 78, and he and General Breedlove were roommates for 3 years. They were in the same fraternity. So, how great is that? We have a lot of activity. You can imagine with $730 million of funded research that is a big part of what we do. We think it's a very important part of what we do. We divided our research into 12 core areas. Big data. You hear a lot about big data these days. How do we take massive amounts of information that are available today and convert that into useful knowledge? It turns out that the best predictor for a flu outbreak is to go to Google, pick the top 5 sites. If you Google flu, to pick the top 5 sites, and then do a geographic mapping of where are the people that are going to Google in the past week or 2 weeks Googling from. And that is a better predictor than the best models that the Centers for Disease Control has. And so it's things like that that are relatively simple but can take massive amounts of information and create useful knowledge. Some of the other areas are pretty obvious. Paper science and technology. We've had a very, very active paper science and technology program here. We just received the transfer from the Institute for Paper Science Foundation of $43 million and a gift to create the Renewable Bioproducts Institute. And so we're very excited about that. Robotics, doing a lot of exciting things with robotics. This isn't machines that are welding automobiles in Detroit or someplace. This is robots that can do some amazing things. Robots that can sense whether or not you are paying attention, and if you're not, do some things to get your attention. It reminds me of my 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Kabler, except she used a yardstick. Robots that can sense pressure and do just some amazing things. We're seeing those be developed. Then some of the other things. People and technology. You say, what is people and technology? This is a lot about the human-machine interface. How do humans and machines, whether it's robotics, systems, computers, how do they interact? and a lot of work going on in those areas. So a lot of exciting things. Just a couple of examples. This is Ravi Bellamkonda. Ravi is the chair of our biomedical engineering program, and he holds the Anne Flanagan Chair, Endowed Chair in Biomedical Engineering. Ravi is working on a project. It turns out that there are certain types of brain cancer that will follow the neural networks, those pathways, and grow in the neural network pathways or along capillary structures. He's developing man-made nanostructures that are preferential for growth for tumors. So if you've got a deep-seated tumor in your brain, that he can build a nanostructure that will help that tumor migrate from the inner portion of the brain out to the edge where it can be removed. This is actually a camera that you can inject into your, that's a finger right there, and so that's a camera that gives 3D images inside the heart real time. So you can inject that into the system through a hypodermic needle in your arm and then get a visual image of the heart. This is a replacement for the heart catheter that they put in down in your groin and run up so that they can look at the veins and arteries in your heart. So just some amazing things that are going on. And then a program that's been going on a long time, since the 70s, used by structural engineers. It's engineering software, was recently acquired by Intergraph to try to do some modeling. And you'll see a new building coming up. I'll talk about it in a minute, the high-performance computing facility. But it's a process where we can use a 5-dimensional representation of buildings. So you say, well, what's 5 dimensions? Well, it's 3, X, Y, and Z. Time is number 4, and cost is number 5. So that we can look at what is the impact to the construction of a building if we can do some things earlier or do some things later. But some amazing stuff going on here. We are trying to expand our influence globally, trying to see how we can impact what's going on in the nation and in the world. One of the tenets of our strategic plan was to have people care and ask the question, what does Georgia Tech think? So when an issue that comes up that has something to do with technology, some issue that's in some way connected with technology, we want people to say, well, what does Georgia Tech think? And so we are placing a lot of our faculty, a lot of our students, a lot of our researchers in a position where they can be asked and can be responsive to some of those issues. You may have seen some of our folks on television or in the news expressing their thoughts and opinions about what's happening with this gaming. How is gaming affecting the way young people behave? How is it affecting their cognition and those types of things? So they're serving as media experts. We were fortunate this past year. We had 3 U.S. Cabinet secretaries that visited us. Secretary Penny Pritzker from Commerce was here, and she was looking at the Global Center for Medical Innovation. This is a project that we had with the federal government. It was funded $1.7 million from the federal government. We put $1.3 million in it, and it's to fabricate new medical devices. It was called an I-6 grant, and we were one of the early I-6 grant recipients. And within a year, the Global Center for Medical Innovation was a standalone center that was self-sustaining. And it was a huge success. She came down to see that and spent a day with us. Jay Johnson, shown here, is the Secretary of Homeland Security, and he came down and spent a day with our folks in cybersecurity. We are doing a lot of work in cybersecurity. We've got a number of new startup companies. It's something that historically has been very strong. Chris Klaus, undergraduate students in the late 90s, started a company called Internet Security Systems, which was sold to IBM. Chris is one of our alums. He's still actively engaged, but we now have the Chris Klaus Advanced Computing Building. He actually did that before he made the contribution for that building before he was 25. I remember that because I hear this story that he was from Florida, he landed at the airport and he was too young to rent a car. He probably could have bought Enterprise Car Rental, but, and then Ernie Moniz is Secretary of Energy, and Raphael, our provost, actually serves on his advisory board, has known Ernie for some time, but he came down to look at some of the things that we're doing in energy. So it's great to have people from Washington come down, talk to us about what we're doing and what our thoughts are about some of the key issues that are facing the country. We're expanding our influence regionally. Just this area that you're in right now, we celebrated the 10th anniversary last year. 12 years ago, this place was vacant lots, razor wire, and broken glass. This was not a great place in Midtown Atlanta. We built the conference center and hotel. This is actually the hotel, and if you go 50 feet that way, you're in the conference center. It's hard to tell the difference except the carpet changes color. Across the street, the Scheller College of Business, the bookstore, our foundation is next door, the Georgia Tech Foundation, and a number of other buildings and facilities around here that has changed the scope and the feel of this place in a way that's just really hard to imagine. We are creating an innovation zone in this region to try to attract startups. We have 100 startups in a building across the street called the Synergy Building. About 40 of them are ATDC Select companies, and these are companies that start up. They apply, and we pick a few of them, and they can come in there. We assist them in the startup process. But it's amazing how many startups are actually started by students. 80%. We're the third largest producer of patents in the state, and 80% of the patents and invention disclosures at Georgia Tech have at least one student listed as a co-inventor. We had a presentation earlier this morning by one of our students, a young woman named Rachel Ford. Rachel is a senior. She has started 2 companies. The first is a company with she and some of her fellow students, a company that they've developed a pacifier that is orthodontically designed to prevent problems with braces, but more importantly, it will change color if the baby is running a fever or is overheated and gets overstressed. The other company is every one of your automobiles has a little connection where if you take it in to get it repaired, they'll hook a computer up to it, and they can tell what's wrong with it. If you're driving along and the engine light comes on, you have no idea what that means. Engine light. So they've developed a device. It's about this big. It plugs into that, and then you can look at exactly the information that they can get about what the problem is on your iPhone with your car. So if the engine light comes on, it'll tell you whether it's safe to drive it, your radiator level's low or your oil level's low. But the engine light is not a lot of information. There's a lot of information there, but they've got an opportunity to get that. We've got a number of companies in this area that have created innovation centers. Panasonic, Penguin Computers, Ernst & Young, Home Depot just opened was one of the most recent ones. AT&T Mobility are all located within probably 200 yards of this. They have small centers of innovation where they're working with our researchers, our faculty, our students to try to create new ideas, new inventions, and generate new products. John Avery here is a Georgia Tech alum. He runs the Panasonic Innovation Center, and Ralph De La Vega is the president and CEO of AT&T Mobility, and they just opened a foundry. It's one of 4 in the world that they have, their innovation centers. They have one in Plano, Texas, which is their headquarters. They have one in Tel Aviv. They have one in Mountain View, which is Silicon Valley, and the 4th one is here in Tech Square. We're also trying to be innovative and creative in how we educate students. About a little over 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5 years ago, Raphael came to me and said, Bud, we are Georgia Tech. We need to get involved and engaged in this technology-assisted learning. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he talked about it. We talked about it a little bit. And he worked with our faculty to develop 5 courses, none for credit. We didn't charge any tuition, but they were 5 courses that used what's called the MOOC format, the Massive Open Online Classroom. So it's a way to reach many, many students. We put those 5 courses out for enrollment, for registration, and the first day had 20,000 students enroll. Today we have about a dozen courses and 700,000 students enrolled in those. But they're not for credit courses, so we don't charge anything. We don't give any credit. But they helped us learn a lot about how to use this MOOC format. About 1.5 years ago, we announced the establishment of an online Master of Science in Computer Science for under $7,000 from Georgia Tech. So if you were an on-campus student, a resident student, it would be about $25,000. If you were an on-campus, out-of-state student, it would be about $45,000. But this program allows students to get a master's degree in computer science online for under $7,000. There's been a lot of skepticism early, but it is going very well. We have about 1,200 students involved in that course, or in that program right now, several cohorts that are going through, and it's going very, very well. Been on the front page of the New York Times at least twice, and gotten a lot of attention. Service learning and global challenges. I talked about global challenges a little bit, but service learning, emphasis on undergraduate research, both very important activities here. You know how competitive it is to get to Georgia Tech, to get into Georgia Tech. You worked on the applications, you waited for the acceptance letter, you went through that process. It is a very competitive place. Average GPA is about 3.95, average math, verbal SATs, 1440 or somewhere in that range. And the thing that separates a lot of the students that we admit from those we don't admit is what's their involvement and engagement in their communities, in their high schools. Are they in leadership positions? Do they do service types of activities? Those are the things that we're looking for. We're not just looking for smart people or smart young people. We are looking for smart young people that are heavily engaged, and we try to continue that. One more comment about flipped classrooms. You say on this technology-assisted learning, is it helping here on campus? It is helping a great deal. Our on-campus courses helping quite a bit, because now we have, when Raphael and I were in college, the faculty member would write with chalk on one hand and erase with the other, and we'd take notes frantically, and then we'd go to the library after the class was over and try to figure out what they just said. Today, the students can go online, they can watch the lectures, they can watch it and review different parts of the lectures if they have questions, and then when they come to class, they can actually talk about what it is that they learned in the lecture and what are the key points. And that has helped actually improve our on-campus residential education. Involving the students in innovation. The Inventure Prize is a great program. About 500 students or student teams are involved in this every year. It's where students come forward with an idea for a business or a product, and they compete. We narrow it down to about 8 student teams, and then we have the final competition in the first center. The students come in. It's a little bit like the students say American Idol for geeks, because the students come in. They have a 3 or 4 minute video that they prepared beforehand. It's in front of an audience of 11 or 1,200 people. It's broadcast on Georgia Public Broadcasting. They come in, they show their 3 or 4 minute video, they make a 3 or 4 minute live presentation, and then a panel of judges ask them questions. And then the judges go back and pick a winner, first, second, and third place. First place gets $20,000, second place gets $15,000, but they also get a commitment from our Office of Intellectual Property to help them commercialize the product. We've done this 6 years in a row. Out of the 5 years where we've had a previous year's winner, in 3 of those years, the product that won first place the year before was commercially available. So these are companies that are very, very successful, and it is great. The students love it. Here's the pacifier. Kind of interesting. There were 3 people on the team, these 2 young men and a woman. I mentioned Rachel Ford. They stood with the pacifiers, and Rachel did most of the talking. Industry partnerships, we're trying to create and expand our partnerships. I think many of you know we've had a great partnership with Emory University in the biomedical engineering space. Just a tremendous partnership with them. Went from not having any biomedical engineering program to having the number 2 or 3 program in the country, and that's been very helpful. We're expanding that partnership. We're building a joint library storage facility to take books out of our library and locate them with Emory's books in a single facility, because one big storage facility is better than 2 small storage facilities, and we can share. We recently announced a $20 million partnership with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta to focus on pediatric health care. Physicians have realized that children are not just small people. Their metabolism's very different, the way they behave different, their growth platelets are different, and a lot of the issues that they face are very different than they are for adults, and particularly adult males. We've got a new partnership with the Centers for Disease Control. Tom Frieden and I have worked together on that. He's been a little preoccupied with some other things here recently, but that's going very, very well. I mentioned the Renewable Bioproducts Institute, and then continuing to look at these partnerships with some of the companies I met that have innovation centers here in town. Campus improvements. In the past 5 years, we've spent almost $640 million on new facilities or major renovations. So we are continuing to change the campus. A number of athletic facilities here, the Zelnak basketball practice facility, but also academic, the Marcus Nanotechnology Building, and we secured funding for this design of the library towers renovation. We're taking all the books out of the library, which is in the center of campus, and going to repurpose that space into academic space. The Mason Building, which is the civil engineering building. Carbon Neutral Energy Solutions Building is a research facility to look at energy usage and how we can make carbon neutral types of, or produce energy that's carbon neutral. Latest project is the Engineered Biosystems Building. It's out on 10th Street. You can see it coming up out of the ground. We will be in and occupying that building within a year. It is the largest, most expensive building at Georgia Tech. It's about a $113 million facility. And it looks, this picture isn't very old, but it's very outdated. That's all bricked in right now, and we're making great progress. So this is the view from 10th Street, looking at the building, and the rest of the campus would be back here. The role of this building is to develop solutions. It will be an interdisciplinary building with biology, chemistry, biochemistry, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, physics, biomedical engineering, to look at new developments. And the people that are doing research in this area, Dr. Bras, Ravi Bellamkonda, when they talk about this building, they say if there are solutions for cancer that will be discovered, that they will be discovered in this building at the intersection between engineering and science. Athletics, need to talk about athletics. Big game tomorrow. I think we're going to have a sellout with Georgia Southern. I'm a little nervous. I was told just before I came in that we're picked a 22-point favorite. Don't believe it. We'll believe that after we win by 23 points. Enormously proud of our athletic teams. We have 17 Division I athletic sports, 7 of them. So there's a thing called the academic progress rate, which evaluates student athletes' academic progress. The best you can do is 1,000. It's kind of like a batting average. It's complicated, I won't explain it, but the best you can do is 1,000, and we had 7 of the 17 teams that had a perfect APR score. Golf has had a perfect APR score. Our men's golf team has had a perfect APR score for every year that the APR has been conducted. So they've had 1,000, and it's just a great, we've got tremendous student athletes. And what's also or additionally impressive about that, I think, is the fact that we don't have a single program, academic degree program here, that doesn't require 2 semesters of calculus, 2 laboratory science courses, and a computer science course. So these are not student athletes that are taking basket weaving 1 or something. These are student athletes that are actively engaged and involved in their academic pursuits. Football, we actually had 4 sports that were in the top. Their scores were, well, the 7, aside from the 7 that got a perfect score, because that puts you in the top 10%. But there were 4 other sports that were in the top 10%. One of those was football, and I won't try to remember the others. But very, very proud of our athletic teams. Very proud to be a member of the Atlantic Coast Conference. U.S. News and World Report rankings just came out. They rank universities. Again, we rank number 7 in terms of public universities. But the ACC Conference, there are 5 major conferences. The ACC, the Big 10, which has 12, the Big 12, which has 10, the SEC, which has some, and the Pac-N, where N is an integer between 1 and 20. A lot going on in athletics, but of the 5 power conferences, as they're called, in the top 35 institutions in the country, the ACC has 7. So 7 of the ACC schools are in the top 35 institutions in the U.S. News World Report ranking. The next highest number is another conference I won't mention, but there are 4. So we had 7 and they had 4. We are a conference that is academically focused, but also athletically focused and competitive. Capital campaign, just a word. We started a capital campaign to raise $1.5 billion. It goes through December of 2015, so we've got about 16 months to go. We've raised $1.46 billion. We've got about $40 million to go. We are going to reach that goal. It's to build facilities. It's to provide scholarships. It's to provide endowed chairs and professorships for our faculty. Georgia Tech allocates $50 million a year in need-based aid. That doesn't count the Hope Scholarship, but $50 million a year. That only meets about half of the computed need-based aid at Georgia Tech. But that is a phenomenal number to think that because of the philanthropy of our former students and our supporters that we are able to provide $50 million a year in scholarships for our students outside of the Hope Scholarship Program. I want to do one more thing before I finish, but let me open it up for questions and try to take some questions for about 10 minutes, and then I want to show you one short video, and then we'll turn you loose. So questions at this point. I usually say at this point that if you don't ask questions, I'm going to have to start talking about thermodynamics. What did our children study? Sorry. Our children, they both entered the executive MBA program in the Scheller College. Our number 2 son, our second son, Brennan, got his bachelor's degree at Texas A&M and was working in Houston. Got an Aggie out there, I hear. And was working in Houston. We didn't think he'd ever leave Texas. And then he informed us that he was going to London and quitting his job and going to London. There was a young woman involved in that decision. But when he came back from London to Houston, it wasn't quite the same, so he decided he wanted to move to Atlanta. He got transferred here to Atlanta and enrolled in the MBA program, the executive MBA program, got accepted, called his older brother who was in Washington, D.C., told him what he was doing, and he decided to quit his job and move here, find another job, and enrolled in the program. So they were both, one was in the Global Executive MBA program, GIMBA, the other was in the the Management of Technology Executive MBA program. And I will tell you that the way you evaluate these MBA programs, and in particular the Executive MBA program, a lot of the evaluation comes on the value added. What was the type of job and the salary level that these young people had when they started the program, and what's the salary level and type of job they have when they finish the program. And I can tell you that the cost of the program is fairly high. I think it's around $75,000 or $80,000, but it has been well worth it for them. Both of them finished the program, got great jobs. They had pretty good jobs before, but had great jobs, and are enormously pleased that they decided to do that. Yes, sir. Val and I left Texas A&M in 2000, and we're at Rensselaer from 2000 to 2006. So we were there for 6 years, and it was the 7 hardest winters we've ever had in our life. Yeah, it's a great school. A lot of similarities between Rensselaer, and in fact, I suspect that a number of your young people may have applied there. We're glad they decided to come to Georgia Tech. Other question? Yes, sir. I mean, that's a great question. $7,000 online bachelor programs. We actually have, we have a couple of online master's programs. We don't have any online bachelor's programs, correct, Raphael? So we don't have any online bachelor's. We were very deliberate. There's been a lot of press about these MOOCs. And one of the things that they get bashed for is the success rate is very small. I think it was California. What school did the mathematics? San Diego State did San Jose State. Yeah, I'm sorry. San Jose State did a program in remedial math and using this MOOC format, and it did not work well at all. And a lot of bad press about that. Part of the reason, I think, was because a lot of the students that were trying to take that remedial math class couldn't handle the technology. So we were very deliberate. If somebody's going to be able to handle the technology, it's probably computer science, right? And if they've got a master's degree, then they've been through an post-secondary educational program. They understand how university courses work, how much effort and energy they take. We also required that they have a degree in computer science or management information systems or electrical engineering. So these are students that have had success academically. And so they have, we think, a high degree of success academically. We may get to the point where we have online undergraduate degree programs. We have some undergraduate courses that are online. We teach 250 students, high school students, Georgia Tech calculus across the state of Georgia. So it's not AP calculus, it's Georgia Tech calculus. They get a grade from Georgia Tech, and it's transferable credits from Georgia Tech, not from AP. So we do that with 250 high school students right now and are looking at expanding that. But it'll be a while before we go to degree programs, full degree programs. Yeah.
One thing you should keep in mind, the master's level student that we're talking about, average age is 34, is a completely different person, a more mature person. There's a big difference between a professional master's and what I call the education of a young person. A very, very different phenomena. So it is very, it's really not fair to compare it. I should add that the same degree, master's program online, that we have is offered residentially. And in fact, for much younger people, and in fact, the number of applications to that program went up.
We were concerned a little bit about this online master's bleeding off students for the on campus, but actually we saw a pretty significant increase in the online applications. It is interesting when you think about this technology-assisted learning. We do three things here at Georgia Tech with respect to undergraduate students. We do a lot of things, but basically it's three things. It's the faculty-to-student interaction, it's the student-to-student interaction, and it's what I call the other education. So the faculty-student interaction, we've been doing that for 35 years in our distance education or professional education area. We used to send out videotapes. In fact, the beta format videotapes, if you remember those. And we'd send those out, mail lectures out to people, and they'd take courses through correspondence. So we've done the faculty-to-student interaction. I think the reason you're seeing such a huge explosion in these online courses and the online education is because the comfort level with students using virtual technologies to communicate and interact with each other, their comfort level is so high. I don't have any friends that I've never met, but your young people have hundreds of friends that they've never met. And they're very comfortable. In fact, sometimes I think too comfortable in terms of what they share with each other online, but they're very, very high comfort level. So that's the the reason there's such a big increase, I think, is because the student-to-student interaction the comfort level is very, very high. The third part, the other education, which I think is probably, I hope, is an important reason that you sent your young people at Georgia Tech, is so that they could learn all the other things that you learn in college. How to interact with people, how to communicate, how to work in teams, how to be the kind of person that they're going to be when they go out into the real world. And that's a big part. Clubs, leadership opportunities, collaborative relationships, that's a big part of the college experience. And that's why I'm not worried. I think Georgia Tech is going to continue to be here. Study abroad, co-op, undergraduate research projects, these innovation competitions and those types of things. That's the type of other education that I think we offer that is tremendously important. I just can't imagine how that can happen in an online type of environment. Maybe one or two more questions and then we'll stop. Yes, sir, way in the back.
Can you comment on Greek life, fraternity, sororities, the good and the bad?
I'll talk about the good and the good. I will tell you that the Greek life, the Greek letter organizations here at Georgia Tech are a hugely positive influence on the institution. That's not the case everywhere in the country. I can tell you that for sure. But here at Georgia Tech, they're a very, very positive influence. They help in a number of different ways. One, they allow the students to create a peer group, and we're spending a lot of time and effort to try to increase the activity that week before the semester starts for freshmen to create an opportunity for them to have activities with another group of students so that they can create that peer type of relationship so that when things get a little tough, they've got somebody that they can talk to. And fraternities and sororities do that. They provide the students with a lot of leadership opportunities and a lot of responsibility. They have to run these houses, the Greek letter houses that they live in. They have to run, and if they don't keep them clean, the interfraternity or Panhellenic Council gets after them. And so there's a certain cooperative, and I talked about this other education. It's really a facilitating of the other education. And somehow in that process, they gain a stronger affinity for Georgia Tech. We have the 50-year reunion, the 40-year reunion, and a 25-year reunion every year. And the fraternities, the 50 and, 40 were okay. 50, we have mostly fraternities at the 50-year reunion still because there weren't a lot of women at that time. But they come back and interact with their fraternity brothers and sorority sisters in a very, very positive way. And we think that the Greek life, Greek letter organizations are a very, very positive influence. Are there some issues? Yeah, there's some issues. The rush usually has a tendency to have some alcohol involved, which isn't a great thing for us. And we work with them on that. But they do a great job of policing themselves, which is another learning opportunity for them. Bill, I don't know if you want to...
They have a very high graduation rate.
That's right. The graduation rate for the Greek letter students in the Greek letter organization is a little higher than it is for the overall student body. And I think that's because, again, they have this support group. Well, I'm going to stop here. There's one more thing I want to do. You laughed when I talked about Nick Selby, so I assume that most of you saw Nick Selby's video. I want to tell you that wasn't a one-off type of thing. We started this a number of years ago. At commencement, we wanted to get the students more involved, so we decided to have a reflection at the start of the ceremony. And that worked so well at the at commencement that we started doing it for the convocation, the freshman convocation, which is where Nick Selby was. But I'm going to show you a video from last May's commencement of the student reflection at that ceremony. This is Nekabari, and I'll let him introduce himself here in a second.
For as long as I can remember, people have been telling me the same things. Nekabari, one day you're going to do something great. While I'm not sure what it will be, where it will be, or when it will happen, I am sure that there's something special about you, and that one day the entire world will know that too. And thus, inundated with the constant reminders of the great expectations of others, I've lived life every single day in constant critique of myself. Always asking one small but very fundamental question: have I done enough? Have I read enough books? Have I met enough people? Have I made enough A's? Have I traveled to enough countries? Have I done enough for me to look back at my life over the past few years and feel proud about how far I've come? 2 years ago, the answer to this question was yes. And then something interesting happened that changed that. I graduated from, let's say, another well-known institution of higher learning in the state of Georgia, situated in a college town not too far east of here known as Athens. And I enrolled as a wide-eyed graduate student here at Georgia Tech. And as you can probably imagine, after just a couple of weeks here on campus, my then high and mighty perceptions of the concept of enough got moved up a few rungs. Never in my life had I been surrounded by so many people who demonstrated such a fervent desire to change the world around them and not just live in it. And thus, being the naturally inquisitive person that I've always been, upon beginning graduate studies here at Georgia Tech, I asked myself yet another question. What is it about this place, this Georgia Institute of Technology, that has the ability to attract students from all walks of life and from the furthest corners of the globe? I've asked myself this question every day for the last 2 years, and it wasn't until about 2 months ago, while I was at home relaxing during spring break, that I got my answer. And the answer was this: the Georgia Institute of Technology is one of the few places in the world in which the concept of enough doesn't exist. You see, because enough implies sufficiency, and sufficiency implies an end. If one studies enough, then one need not study more. If one learns enough, then one need not learn more. And if one does enough, well, then one need not do more. As I look out into the crowd this evening and see students representing different countries, different areas of academic focus, and ultimately different walks of life, I realize that the very thread that holds us all together and forever binds us to the great legacy of this institute is this belief that enough, ironically, isn't enough at all. It is the belief that enough is nothing that wakes us up every day, picks up our feet one by one, and walks us to the library. It is this belief that enough is nothing that sits us in front of the computer for hours, writing papers, writing code, and running lab reports. And it is this belief that enough is nothing that has landed us here at this very moment today. And so as we graduate from Georgia Tech this evening, I encourage each and every one of you to wake up tomorrow, the next day, and every day thereafter, keeping in mind one single fundamental truth, that being that enough is nothing, and that arriving at this realization is everything. Thank you all, and congratulations.
So I got to tell you, it is hard to follow these young people on the podium when they do things like that. Thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of the Parents program. Get involved in the Parents Association. It's a great organization. Parents tell me that they learn more about what's going on at Georgia Tech from the Parents Association oftentimes than they do from their young person. But thank you for entrusting us with your young people. Good luck. Enjoy the day.